The engine as the lead developer unites industry enterprises and institutions in the creation of the most powerful PD-35 engine in the history of the domestic aviation industry. The unique development of PERM designers gave impetus to the emergence of fundamentally new progressive technological solutions that will bring the parameters of thrust, economy, and engine weight to a qualitatively new level. The deadline set for us will be 35, which will be the pride of Russian aviation. The most important unit that provides an advanced level of engine parameters. Before the creators of the engine, PD-35 is an ambitious task to make a fan with a diameter of more than 3 meters with composite blades. Their use will reduce the weight of the engine to 400 kilograms. At the moment, a model of a similar blade from The development of materials for the construction of technologies for the production of composite fan blades according to D35 is in full swing. There is a lot of work ahead to ensure strict certification requirements, the main one being strength requirements. Today, the first stage of testing of a model fan and composite materials began in PERM. Its creation became possible thanks to the cooperation of the PERM KB with the Baranov Central Institute of Aviation Engine Engineering, the All-Russian Research Institute of Aviation Materials, the PERM National Research Polytechnic Universities, as well as with enterprises, partners of DEC Saturn and ODCA-UFA Engine Manufacturing Association. The test site for the prototype fan was the engine, winning 14.
Well, let's get straight to the point of the press conference, Alexander.
Alexandrovich, good afternoon, dear journalists, dear listeners, viewers. A couple of words in addition to the fact that you saw advertising videos. Why have we asked you to come together and, with your help, to inform, first of all, our compatriots about such an event that happened in our country in the nearest future? The two-contour engine today completely dominates, will dominate for many more decades to come, and the success of the efficient operation of the aircraft and the engine is laid mainly by the engines due to the high double-contour engine. They said engines are growing again, all the pleasures of efficiency. Well, in no way on any aircraft the problem of mass in the aircraft and the engine is problem number one. So for a large, heavy engine, the issue of reducing mass is all worthwhile questions. Well, almost in first place. We understood perfectly well when we scored this project that to become on a par with our main competitors, which today is Rolls-Royce and Gene Electric. True, the distance of large engines did not agree. This is one of the important technologies. This is to master the next technological direction. Making a blade is even easier than making a vacuum on Titan out of plastic. Well, it's easy to say, but behind this technological breakthrough are years and decades of work by enterprise institutes. Well, of course, I will call them ours, although compatriots, but the Americans harnessed this technology for approximately 20 years, both companies in order to begin importing passengers with the help. Here is the technology of the plastic block fan. We managed to solve this problem somewhat faster. I can't say the word we decided at the beginning of the journey, but we have made a very serious breakthrough in this direction. Together we have created the design, the technology, such a blade, and we manufactured one pilot kit, conducting the required volume of tests, which allowed us to assemble the engine with these blades and begin bench testing. This happened literally last month. And quarantine let us down a little. We wanted to report this in April. Well, I see, news will be an event. Nevertheless, it all happened. What I would like everyone to understand, of course, without the scientific and technical background that I have been creating for a long time. In general, this would not have been possible without the materials that VM created for us. It would also have been impossible. This is the beginning, the starting platform for all this work. And we managed to create, first of all, here in PERM 1 Technical University, to create an actual experimental production of composite blades on the basis of those small reports on the basis. Those materials and technologies that we created for Motogonda 14 but the center shows you this laboratory is modestly called the laboratory. In fact, this is already the most powerful research and production center that has been created in Perm, and on the basis of this equipment technology of these specialists, we have mastered the manufacturing technology. Polymer opposition blades. The fan, while there are no P-35 engines, we, are now in the P stage. We decided to fill up the cones and accumulate experience on the engine up to 14. This is the path we have embarked on now. We will continue along it. In addition to us, Aircraft Engine and the Perm Practical Institute, the Finnish engine industry took the most active part in the creation of this blade, combining this input metal edge you see on the shoulder blade, without which space unfortunately can't stand it, getting birds there, stones there, garbage and so on. All exemplary blades have such an edge. This is the most difficult technological problem. It was decided by our UFA colleagues. Saturn was actively involved. I have to say that upon completion, testing the design of technologies through serial production of these for us, for the PD-35 and other engines where we will use them, will be done by SATU, that is, we are there. We organize this production. This is such an event. Well, I have to say that around the world, this level of technological breakthrough occurs once every 10-15 years. So we decided to tell our public about it with your help, so that they think that we are all dying from COVID here. That's how we work. We don't just work and make very serious technological breakthroughs. I intend to, as I develop such technologies, Attack 35 inform you regularly. I think there will be a lot of interesting information coming up for you in the next 23 years about such goals. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alexander Alexandrovich, Valery Alexandrovich. I would like to pass the floor to you, please. What is the national importance of technology for the formation of a scientific and technological reserve?
I want to confirm the words of Alexander Alexandrovich about the design development. Materials, as the source material will deposit, requires a large manufacturing and testing technology approach. This is a big step towards creation. The latest technology, which we did not have in Russia, in the Soviet Union, and without which it is impossible to create an engine of this size. We must say that the creation of a promising turbojet 2 contour engine cries 2450 tons of force. In general, this is a huge task, which generally speaking can only be undertaken by the highly developed countries, of which we know in the unification of Europe and America. And so not much. Therefore, in order to create such an engine, we have about 24 critical technologies. But one of them, the first number, means just the development of technology for creating a chorus fan blade from polymer composite materials, without this not solving this problem. And there is nothing to say about the creation of such a promising, powerful engine. Of course, along with many critical technologies which we have there, I already say about 24. This is the defining technology that tells us whether we can build such an engine or not. Considering that we do not have much time, and the foundation is not good enough in terms of the fact that we are in serious sanctions and equipment, and any developments related to them practically do not reach us. And unrealistic, so we had to do everything ourselves, and to the great credit of the organizer of this work, Inozemtsev, our comrade solved this problem in a short period of time. How this was impossible within the dimensions of D-35, since in fact there is no fan for D-35, and it was accepted. I think it's a very competent decision. Create. The design means a new fan from new exemplary materials, from new technologies, in the size of 214 engines that exist, and within which this design can be tested. And this was successfully done in a short time, despite many difficulties. This means that the one test we passed showed that. We are on the right track, and in principle we can make such blades. This gives us confidence that this work will of course be completed. The most complex engine will be developed, and this pledge in general of great success. It is this first step of the program that we have today They, generally speaking, are this engine that we now intend to make. This is, of course, civil aviation strengthening our role in the market of civil equipment, because so far our share there is extremely low. And today we see hundreds of aircraft of foreign companies. So this work will allow us to create the engine and actually a glider for civil aviation flights, not only in the Russian Federation, which has a huge distance, but also abroad, since the requirements for such an engine must meet all the criteria of international organizations. And in terms of noise and emissions for many things, therefore, the program that exists today, and there are 4 of them, they all fit in exactly one of the key tasks, is creating polymer opposition blades, and this is only one step. All our previous work, all the engines that are designed or flown today are already doing. Well, flights, if this fishing work is successful, the work will be completed, then of course here it is. This technology will allow us to move on and find technology on many other engines. So creating this basic technology within this engine. We are looking at the future and at those engines that work today in order to reduce their weight, increase the reliability of operation, engine life, economy, and much more. Therefore, of course, this work cannot be overestimated. She's very important. Practically very important, and most importantly, we outlined the roadmap 56 years ago, and we must pay tribute. Well, aircraft engine developers, that they are scrupulously following this program, attracting the very next specialist in our country. There were a lot of doubts about solving this problem and actually maintaining the pace of work. When we set up this work, would we be able to solve this problem without actually having such a short period of time for technical equipment? When I raised this question, and 4 years ago, we wrote a note to the president that this work should go ahead and break it down into certain stages. A task was set, and I said then that it would be extremely difficult to create such an engine in more than 12 years. Well, then our current minister, means Mansurov, said 10 years maximum that the state can release this work. This work has begun, and it must be said that our specialists are solving complex problems step by step. Well, first of all, I am an aircraft engine, and those who take part in this process have taken a very important step in this work. Therefore, judging from the point of view of technology, from the point of view of equipment, from the point of view of time, I believe that this is a great success. First of all, developers mean that this technology is unique. And I want to say that they have the future. Yeah, we are used to that. For many years, the fan we have is metal titanium alloys. This means that this transition to non-metallic means polymer materials is a very serious step that will give you the opportunity to use new and existing technologies and significantly improve these engines that are now working. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandrovich. Thank you, colleagues. In accordance with the regulations of our press conference, I ask journalists accredited from Moscow to send their questions to a specially created chat on WhatsApp. Now, journalists will be able to ask their questions Alexander Alexandrovich personally, but for now, one question directly from me, Alexandrovich, a question to you about the fan blade made of polymer composite materials, which we are talking about today, created as part of the project engine PD-35. What is the project PD-35, the main developer of which is ODK aircraft engine on the internet, a lot of different contradictory information? I would like to get a specific, so to speak, exact answer as to what the PD-35 engine is and what significance it only has. For the enterprise ODK, how much for the domestic aviation industry as a whole is such a question?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to say that we create more than once, not just engines. We are creating a family of engines, in a word with a conventional name, the central project PD-35. This is the engine that will allow our airmen go into the second largest global market niche. This is where we are going. The MS-21-5014 aircraft will account for approximately 60% of the world market for the next 40 years. Here are wide-body long-haul aircraft Class 35 engines, which account for 30% of the world market. And all other types of aircraft, 10%, that is gaining confidence. Owning the production of such engines will allow not only our rational industries, we will offer this engine to everyone who wants to cooperate with us, will allow us to participate in the market approximately worth for the next 30 years, approximately about $100 billion. This is the purpose of creating such an engine.
Thank you very much, Valery Alexandrovich. Currently, composite fan blades are already actively used in Western aircraft engine manufacturing. For example, in open sources, there is information that 3 generations of such blades are being developed. What, in your opinion, is the uniqueness of our domestic, so to speak, blades from? Which one?
Well, first of all, the technologies that they reflect in the open press do not always correspond to the fact that in fact, there are generations. Which generations are named? There are 3. They are quite different in terms of technology. There are different technologies. This is laying, this is weaving, and so on and so on. However, it must be said that the size of the blade, its load, and so on, has a serious impact. Naturally, all these data were known by our developers, and we focused on those indicators for those engines that will go on sale after 22 years. That is not on the current one, but on those that would make them competitive. Therefore, of course, it means we know the nuances of technology that are there. Well, 80%, 90% of all the nuances, we don't know. No one introduces us to them. They show finished products. And however, our specialist developers had to go through the process first, so to speak, from the very beginning of materials and so on, and develop. I believe that these are the main eyelids in development, which means such a technology for manufacturing such creatures. They are, in general, roughly divided into 2 by 2 parts of 1. This is what we are talking about. This is a different layout by weaving, and in general, these 2 technologies mean here is 1. Tried, developed, and tested 2 is also in the release stage. I think that there is no doubt, so to speak, that we will present their taxes to you soon enough. I believe that we are in no way inferior to these technologies without acting in any way to those that exist in the West. Naturally, they no longer have experience in mass production. We are only starting this work. But I believe that the road from sitting down, we started this business. We started the business competently. So I believe that we have nothing here at the output of the engine. We will not lose in this class.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alexandrovich. Alexander Alexandrovich, I know that you have a spatula directly next to you and you can show it and demonstrate it. Let's show journalists what it looks like.
Where would she go?
Quite objectively.
Detailed presentation. This is what it looks like, colleagues. You can now see this wonderful. We will talk about the structure like that. Well, a number of questions are coming from the media. Publication of the Rossiyskaya Gazeta and done at the same time. I wonder which countries already have this technology. Comment, Alexander Alexandrovich.
This is the 4 of us. This technology is owned by John Electric and ProTweet. This is the United States, and well, the electrician did it together. French firm, Sofran, former Snegma, and Rolls-Royce here. 3 companies own mine, and we are 4.
Znafor Uhgu also, the publication Rossiyskaya Gazeta, asked the question, what does it provide a blade for the engine?
The purpose of this work is to reduce the weight of the engine. I have already talked about large engines. This fan assembly already has its mass measured in hundreds of kilograms, and therefore the issue of weight reduction is one of the key. Well, I'll just say that the transition from a solid blade to a cavity, what we did on PD-14, gives about a 30% reduction in the mass of this node. Here's the transition to the next, another 30%, that is, this is hundreds of kilograms of weight reduction on the engines, but it is clear that this is 22 or 23 dozens of passenger seats on the aircraft, yeah.
On which serial non-R engines has this technology already been implemented? Also, the issue with the Rossiyskaya Gazeta is a whole block here.
Well, it's a wide-body modern aircraft engine. Not much is said. It's money urgently, first of all. Well, on all modern wide-wing aircraft, both English and American engines have these blades. And Valery Alexandrovich correctly mentioned they had time while we were here. Socialism and capitalism were in transition. They had already managed to master technology for 2 generations. Our task now is to catch up with them swiftly, but all modern mainline aircraft and engines operate with polymer composite blades.
On which series of our engines is the technology planned for implementation?
Well, naturally, first of all, we will work on 514, and if we succeed, we will offer it to our airlines as an option, but the key goal is PD-35, because once again, I emphasize that the larger the size of the engine, the greater the effect of application. Such a shovel.
Questions from the airport. Colleagues seek clarification on which tests were carried out on the stand. Solely acceleration, and which tests involved the insulated blade?
The insulated blade has passed all the necessary workshop tests, which are required according to our methods, according to our aviation laws, to be carried out before getting on the engine, so as not to be afraid that it will fall apart on the engine and damage the engine, and all this must be carried out on the engine. While we conducted carefully, we conducted the removal of dual characteristics. In the near future, in August, we will conduct an overclocking test of the real scene ourselves. Then additional research is needed related to the resistance of the blade to hit. Yes, there are birds, and so on and so on. And next year, I hope, we will fly to flying laboratories on PD-14, all such plans.
Great. Well, I am aware that journalist Alexander Alexandrovich is in the hall. I invite them to ask a question directly, offline. If there are any questions in Perry, let's hear them.
Good afternoon. Fyodor Parlanov from Airport Magazine. Well, question 1 has almost been answered. Actually, I'll clarify anyway. Here is the composite blades for the fan. They are created for PD-35, but will they be used for PD-14, or will this be based on the test results?
Analysis of the test results will show that the NAVAR by mass is significantly less than NA. D-35, well, if we can reduce the weight of kilograms by 2030, I think we will convince airlines to buy such engines. It is clear that this technology will continue to exist. Expensive than already mastered, so there are a lot of questions here. And we don't set a goal. This goal is to introduce the application to the intermediate. Even the main goal is 35. Let me remind you that the BD-35 is not a single engine. It is a family of engines up to 50 tons blade. This one you see on a 50-ton tank, it will be 2 times as big, about 2 times as big. That is, of course, the use of such a blade will have a huge effect on class engines. Under 14 Westerners, almost no one uses plastic batches because the effect is small and the price increase is very serious. The technology is still expensive, very difficult. This is only a metal west, therefore. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we will make several agreements with the council by companies, giving them some price preferences so that they can simply earn money on ice so that nothing can replace it with ice. The real thing may be that 2 engines will fly while we create the P-35, and all the fighters there that will be identified can be taught accordingly. So far, this is a final question, but the goal, of course, is families.
Yeah, thank you. And question 2, you said that such technological breakthroughs in the world happen there once every 10-15 years. But in Russia, when similar, well, innovative technologies were introduced in aviation.
Yes, in money building, yes. But together, the floor page. 14 previous renovations were 32 years ago. Here's the next P-14. Here's the next one will be D-35, nothing else. Well, we're not talking about military aviation, so there are their own questions, their own significant events. About civil aviation, unfortunately, file 14 only 2 events after PC-90, certified 92. Therefore, there is nothing to brag about yet, unfortunately.
Valery Alexandrovich, you discussed the stages of introducing mass production. Can you provide a timeline for its introduction, if possible?
Well, first of all, in order to reach mass production, it is necessary to create an engine where there are those that will use these blades. Today we are talking about work, which is like stage 1 for PD, 14 large, 35 dimensions, D14. So I think that when the engine itself is mastered, the power supply will be carried out, then we will reach the level of testing the engine. We will prepare mass production, as is usually done, that is in cooperation, and then our steps will be clear. So who will do what? When will do only after testing the engine demonstrators. Obviously, if we do not get the characteristics, then it is difficult to talk about some kind of serial production. We will not get leaders. And when we do all this, I have no doubt about it, then naturally there will be a plan to develop serial production. I think that within the framework of the roadmap, the software will go 35. Sansanich knows that we have agreed on these deadlines, which means that there are also stages of preparation for serial production there. So it is premature to talk about this now. But here is the step that we have taken. It allows us to say that. Is it real?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question from the ATO publication. Ru Maxim Piatushkin asks, when it is planned to begin flight tests of the full-size demonstrator, it is PD-35. That is a question for you.
Today's schedule is set for 25 years.
In the 25th year, Vladimirovich, the next question to you is also from the Aviaport publication. What other key technologies have to be developed at the decade in order to reach the level of promising high-thrust engines?
Well, the question is interesting. I said that we have about 24 credit technologies for PD-35 engines. Well, the first one we are now discussing is 2 technology for creating a housing for fans of turning materials. The development of a highly objective, highly reliable, high-pressure compressor is also a very important task. There, small chamber combustion manufacturing technology means workers, claps, high-pressure turbines, promising heat-resistant floats. Well, there is a lot to list there for a long time. I will only note here, for example, the psychology of creating a turbine guitar and heat-resistant composite materials face-to-face. So, well, much more. Motor gondolas means S. Laminar ticking is also the coolest task. Here are only part of a dozen listed, and there are another dozen. They are all called screaming, without which it is impossible to create a full-size, normal, reliable engine. So we are now working in all these areas. Today we are talking about only one direction. Really, all these 18 technologies are on the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you very much, colleagues. From Perm, let's continue to ask your questions to Alexander Alexandrovich.
Yulia TV company, Raifi Alexander Alexandrovich. Please tell me, I wanted to clarify, and she repeats the configuration of this new blade. That configuration is titanium when there is or they are here, right?
Different? Yes, of course, because we have to compare in pure form. With the fact that he has accumulated experience in working with that blade, well, then we have our own ways to simultaneously improve the organization. That is, we are not standing still.
How many, if not a secret, of such samples have been created? Where are they now?
About 36 in different types of tests. We break them, live, shake them, break them, shoot them with machine guns, and do everything as usual.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Question from the Russian news agency TASS. As we know, Irkutsk is working on contracts for MC-21. Are there already foreign companies that are preliminarily interested in contracting an aircraft with the Russian MFD-35 engine?
Regarding the market for the PD-35, the most well-known, the most advanced project of its application, by decision of our presidents, is a joint wide-body aircraft with the People's Republic of China. Here, the Chinese announced the market volume of up to 1,000 aircraft working in our initial stage, both for us and for pilots. Domestic wide-body aircraft are still being developed, so no precise data is available yet. Let me remind you that we are now at the stage of creation, such said. The creation of technology is the Nirov stage, which is absolutely necessary in order to assemble, master the technology, like how to make sure this demonstrator after assembling the engine. Convince the government that invests, well, first of all, make sure the technology is in our hands. After this, decisions are made to certify the distribution of serial production, and at this point, contracts are being prepared. Let me remind you that when we started the certification of PD-14, we had a firm fixed contract for 50 engines from Irkut. This is done all over the world according to PD-35. Until that time comes, we expect to get one fixed control in 23.
Thank you very much for the response from my colleague in Perry. Do you have any more questions? If so, please, we are listening.
Sergei Ovchinnikov.
No, I started them all.
Fortunately, we have already talked about the rise in technology. Can we at least guess how much more expensive manufacturing will be now? That's compared to regular metal avatars.
It's hard to say, but we have data indicating mid-production costs for our Western colleagues are about 15-20%. This shovel is costly. But the fact is that more expensive is not such a concept relatively. Even those that are cheaper, no one takes and no one needs because they are heavy. That's why this concept is so pure. For comparison, for journalists, if someone bought the body of a duck, which is cheaper, but no one needs it because we have to remove a dozen passengers and put cheap historical shovels. Who's going to go? Here are the numbers for the attack. Well, this technology itself is very difficult, very complex. Well, you know, now there are polymer communication materials all over the world, but they just don't make them. And I touch the wells, they're already on the compros. I can't understand what they are doing. They will be so complicated, they are all polymer too. And here are the pipes, and there are all the high pressure pipes, bridges. There should be a black wing between the witness. This is a bomb around the world that is examples. Well, first of all, in the carbon fiberglass, suffocates metal everywhere in production, so here it is. But for now, that's all, especially in such highly loaded parts. It is more expensive than metal, but the history of these materials isn't 100 years less than metal. So over time, maybe everything was expressed.
Thanks.
Colleagues, any more questions in Perm?
Yes, Alexander Alexandrovich, TV company, Wind Ruslan Belyaev, in general development. Will it impact the Perm region industry? Maybe the staff will increase and the number of jobs may rise?
At the moment, of course, due to the fact that we managed to start more or less successfully on the serve. 13. The management of the corporation and our government decided to make the family a leader before 35 Perm. Did you know this was reported to you? Although the presidential candidate was enough, take my word for it, so this is, of course, a breakthrough for Perm. First of all, it is a huge investment. The program is to create a production testing base in Perm. We talked about this recently. We had a minister. We just told our young governor everything. We showed the volume of investment in the testing base alone under 60 billion. Perm, such insects are aviation, oil, and gas workers. Probably such projects were in the defense industry and in aviation, industrial giant investments. That is, of course, this is a huge breakthrough for the Perm region. Many enterprises participate in cooperation. Many small issues which we are solving here, are of great importance. Another thing is that you can't do everything in Perm. This is like this, but in any world, in the whole world, this is not a problem of companies. This is a problem of the economy of strangers in the same gene lectures, in the same Verbach Boeing everywhere. This is, a huge number of countries. The site is a giant cooperation. I must say that the engine of long-haul aviation is simply the pinnacle. Everything is absolutely super for Mr. Country. Everything is so, the highest parameters, the most complex materials, everything only there. Because the economy in this airplane is no longer fuel economy, it is no longer operational efficiency. But it hasn't reached it yet. If you flew and landed at a full airfield, covering 10,000 kilometers from the ocean with the nearest airfield 5,000 kilometers away, then a decrease in engine efficiency is no longer an economic matter. Therefore, all the super that has been created by humanity, science, design, technology, and entering this club even for, is not even weak, God forbid.
Thank you. Valery Alexandrovich, question from Rossiyskaya Gazeta. How does a composite blade change the engine's resource and economic parameters?
Well, that's half the question. Tan Sanish replied, I can say as the following. When asked about comparing a metal shovel in cost and so on and so forth, let me remind you that the PD-14 was developed in Russia with a unique hollow blade technology. The most sophisticated technology has been mastered, and it is very expensive too. And I just think it's inappropriate to compare here for one simple reason that Alexandrovich said about this, that it will simply not be of such dimensions as workers, so to speak, an element, but it is necessary to move on to this one, so they are incomparable. What about that aspect you mentioned? So, well, of course, it means the technology itself is new and natural. As with any new technology, it is expensive in the middle of production. Naturally, we know that within 5 years, the cost should be removed by about 30%. That is decrease. More effective. Well, I must say the following, which of course means that today, having taken this one step, we have of course not yet fully challenged the dimensions. Sansanish, I am a rulesome 2 times more. This is the most serious task of massaging problems, so it seems to me that this is only one step. It's a difficult matter, necessary, but the next steps will be no less easy. Quite difficult to master, I didn't understand the size. Engine, and I cross out the dimensions. There the engines would be in the thrust class of 24 to 50 tons, that is the size. Well, big, very big, so I believe that's what we did for today. This is only important, but step 1 is the main technologies that we have there further, and I talked about in parallel now. They can't be simpler or simpler, very complex. And we have about 15, 16 more times to consider such solutions to such complex issues. So I think in the form of conferences, since every solution to these major problems there, I say quite a lot of them. This is a new step. Development, structures and technologies, which I emphasize do not exist in Russia today. We are the first to develop them and will not provide us with assistance in this regard until the border. We have to do it ourselves. That's how I would say it.
Thank you, Alexander Sanik. Question from Vedomosti publication, Alexander Vorobyov. According to current estimates, how much will development cost? When 35, how much of this amount has already been invested in development?
Usually we don't do this, but since the minister voiced it, I can repeat that the project costs 180 billion rubles in order to obtain a certificate, such as how much it will cost to master production and create a sales service system. We will consider my specific moment. I have to say that this is very little money, our colleagues. The creation of such engines, even open source, invested each of the 3, which called $10, $15 billion. So if we're close, let's not fixate on this figure. This will be a significant event. The current assessment is only preliminary.
Also, a colleague, Izato Dodru, is interested in which aircraft they plan to install PD-35 on. Perhaps there has already been an answer to this.
Question. Yes, I have already answered that the closest project to my old man today is a joint wide fuselage long-haul aircraft together with the People's Republic of China, which OAK creates and is working on several different projects in OAK. Well, it's probably more appropriate to ask them a question because I'm not entirely comfortable with their information. We have very intensive studies for such studies. They are usually always at this stage. The point is what you need. I remind you that we are making my engine a demonstrator. Naturally, for each type of aircraft, we'll have to change it a little, maybe even change the dimension change. Why do I always talk about family? The most important thing is that the technology then much, but relatively cheaply, can change the size of the engine, change the purpose. I remind you that this engine will also go to Earth. We always do. You know about this for 214. We are already doing it now for Gazprom. We are starting to do it after we have certified it, and it will be the same here.
Colleagues in Perth, do you have any more questions? Alexander Alexandrovich or perhaps Valery Alexandrovich, please surrender.
Just Rossiyskaya Gazeta, Bern branch, Alexander Shestakov. My question is, will there be any more nodes in PD-35 or will there be details from P to N? What in the future? When?
Well, first of all, this is a Matagon. Yes, I already reported to you a few years ago that for the first time in our practice, we designed and put into production a PD-14 motor gondola. Previously, we always did this on the plane, but since they lost this competence, we had to master it. We then share up to 14, approximately 60% of the mass. These are already polymer composite materials of carbon and fiberglass on the engine PD-35. This will be approximately 80-90% of the mass of the motogondola. It will be glass and fiberglass, but it will be the next technological generation. Different from what the blades are used naturally. Now we are modernizing our centers at the Polytechnic and the future manufacturer plant machine builder as soon as we are there. It will be built in the near future, and we will definitely show you everything so that our citizens can brag about us, so that this is not in place. This is also a technological breakthrough, which in the near future we intend to show and actually manufacture parts there and start testing. Thank you.
Colleagues, thank you very much. We have 10 minutes left before the end of the press conference, and we still have time to answer literally 23 questions. Aviation publication Alexander Alexandrovich is interested. Does your colleague Oleg Panteliev ask you to talk about the role of Perm University in the project? Including if a training program for the design and production of composite parts for aircraft engines.
But Oleg, of course, knows very well that they are all the first 10 acts of the League.
We'll answer anyway.
We will have to answer. For the past 20 years, we have been cooperating very successfully with the Polytechnic University, reminding the teams there for almost 20 years with the department, which we once graduated in '73. Department, everything around it is already about 2,100 billion rubles. Creation of a laboratory of test benches, including. And this is the center of composite technologies. So the role of the institute here is simple. Well, it's hard to overestimate. Well, most importantly, we. There we just don't produce specialists, but we do everything else ourselves there, educate, teach, and treat. Then we take all the cream for ourselves, and everything that we don't collect goes to other enterprises. The program works. Very interesting guys come. Thank God there are those who even threaten to pay our famous ode 68.2 in terms of qualification. Well, we'll wait and see.
If there are no more questions, I will ask Alexander Sanish to demonstrate the shovel again. Members may have questions or clarifications. Let's raise it. Let's see what she looks like. Heroine of our press conference.
The really famous aircraft designer Tupolev said that only something that is beautiful in appearance can fly. She's just a beauty, well, blonde. And some people like brunettes. This is just beautiful for brunettes, right?
The last question is asked by Maxim Pedushkin. Izavto.ru K. Alexander Alexandrovich, do you want composite raw materials? Russian blades are used for new blades. If so, who is the supplier? And most likely the answer to this question has already sounded, but a colleague nonetheless.
I ask.
Said.
Once again, the answer, materials, and domestic. We are excellent. Just like 12 years ago, when we started software in 4 seconds, we understood perfectly well. We will never receive strategic materials that determine competitiveness, regardless of what, regardless of Crimea. All sanctions against us began long before Crimea. This is just an ordinary competition, and therefore we understood perfectly well that we will not get anything from the most modern. All domestic materials are developed by Vayam under the leadership of academician Kavlov, who is also actively involved in technology. And I have to confidentially tell you that this blade won't last long, or I've prepared for you the next generation of polymer materials that will allow you to make it even thinner and stronger, but I'll show you that later.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to the new heroine of our press conference. I hope you will demonstrate it. Also in our TASS Press Center, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Alexander Alexandrovich, Valery Alexandrovich.
There will also be a brunette, alas.
There will also be brunettes.
Several.
Thank you very much for your answers to the questions for the detailed press conference, colleagues, journalists. Thank you very much for your commitment to our topic. We are always glad to see you at the TASS Press Center. That concludes the press conference.